Now that we have created our backgrounds, let me take our player here from our player prefabs and put him in the scene. What we need to do, because we now don't see our player, what we need to do is we need to set his Z position at -2, and now he is visible. And even now, if I run the game, we are going to see our player. He is a little bit too large for our game. Because of that, we are going to rescale him at 0.7, hit apply. And here we are also going to change a couple of things regarding his rigid body. We are simply going to set the gravity scale at 2 and also hit apply so that that applies to our prefab so that he will fall a little bit, well, faster. And now we have our player. We can also take his animation here, the idle one. So let me select the player and set here frames per second at 6. So that way the animation will play a little bit slower. And in order to make our player jump, which is the next thing that we need to do, we need to go here under Game Object, UI, and create a button, because we are going to use this button in order to make our player jump. But let me simply configure our canvas, and I'm going to set screen space to camera and drag the main camera here, and also set constant or scale with screen size by 1280 and 800 or 720, which is our reference resolution. And for our button, I'm going to set it at 00, and I'm going to rename it at jump button, and remove the text from it, and simply take it and take this, well, square tool here and resize our button to fit this whole half of the screen. We can click on his color here and set the alpha channel at 0. And practically this is going to be our button that we are going to take in order to, well, add a function to it, which is going to make our player jump. Now in our scripts folder here, I've created a player scripts folder, and here I've created player jump script. Simply drag that script on our player to attach it on him, and I'm going to hit apply so that that applies on our prefab, and double click it so MonoDevelop will open it here. And let me just tag it here. So let me just tag it with player jump, the name of our script, and give a little bit of space here so that we can see what we are typing. As always, we are going to start by creating a couple of variables, but we also need to type here using UnityEngine.UI so that we are able to use our button as a reference. Here I'm going to create a serialized private audio clip, which is going to be our jump clip. And we also need a private rigid body 2D, which is going to be my body. And we also need a private float, which is going to be jump force is equal to 12F, and also forward force, which is going to be equal to 0 at the moment. We also need a private boolean can jump variable to indicate if we can jump or not. And also what we need here is a private button, which is going to be our jump button, so jump btn. And now we are going to initialize our variables in the awake function. So I'm going to get a reference to our rigid body. So my body is equal to get component rigid body 2D. For our jump button, we are going to say jump button is equal to GameObject.find, and we are going to pass jump button, which is the name of the game object that we want to find. But we need the button component that's attached on our game object. So we need to say here get component, passing the button component that we want to get. So make sure that you name our jump button like this, so jump button, because we are getting that button, or otherwise this will not work. Here I'm quickly going to create a public void jump function, because now we need to add this function as a listener to our jump button. So we need to say jump button dot on click dot add listener, and the syntax for adding a listener is opening these brackets and, or excuse me, opening parentheses, and equals and greater than sign, and passing the name of our function, which is the jump function that we are going to pass. And Now here in our jump function is where we are actually going to make our player jump. The first thing that we are going to check in our jump function is if we can actually jump. So if we can jump, first we are going to set can jump is equal to false so that we are not able to jump again. And now we are going to check if our transform.position.x is less than 0. Then if this is true, we are going to set the forward force. So if it's less than 0, forward force will be equal to 1. Else our forward force is going to be equal to 0. And we are doing this because if I go back here, we are going to have our player here in our scene. The obstacles are going to come from the right side and they're going to be able to move our player on the left side. So if he is moved left, notice here the position X is less than 0. So if this is the case, you are going to make him jump forward, and that's why we are checking if our position is less than 0 or the X position. So moving back here, we're going to say my body.velocity is equal to new vector 2, and we are going to pass our jump force and also, so not jump, it will be jump force and also our forward force. And here we are also going to use our audio source. So audio source dot play clip and point, and we are going to pass our jump clip and we are going to pass transform position for the point. But at the moment, I'm going to comment out these lines of code or this line of code because we don't need to hear at that jump clip. And how can we determine if we can jump? Well, here in the update function, we are going to check if our velocity or the absolute velocity y is equal to 0. So if matf.abs, so the absolute value of my body velocity y is equal to 0, can jump is equal to true. We are using the absolute value because that always returns a positive number, and we are going to check if our, my body velocity y is equal to 0, meaning, the velocity for the y-axis is 0, we are not moving at all on the y-axis, then we can jump. And we can test this out. So if I go back now and run the game, and now I can press anywhere. So excuse me, what I did wrong here. If I go back, I applied jump force on the X and forward force on the Y. So it needs to be vice versa. So apply the forward force on the X and jump force on the Y. So now if I go back and now if I press jump, we see that our player is actually jumping. So again, if I press it, we see the player is jumping. And let us test if our x-axis is less than 0. So notice now he's going to jump forward a little bit. So we see that our, cowboy is jumping forward a little bit. And this is it for our player jump script. Next, we are going to see how can we animate the player and all the other good stuff.